They said it was only a children's tale, a creature of old stories, something whispered around campfires to frighten the little ones. But when the night deepened on the Highveld, they realized some stories don't just live in books. They live in the shadows, in the vast, lonely expanse of the South African countryside. A remote homestead sat under a blanket of stars. It was a place where the wind was the loudest sound, whispering through the tall grass. But tonight, something else was out there. Something was watching. Inside, a family was settling down for the night, unaware of the ancient presence that had fixed its gaze upon them. The father, following a custom he couldn't quite explain, left his worn leather sandals outside the front door. The mother, a quiet unease stirring within her, double-checked the lock, the heavy bolt sliding home with a click that seemed too small a sound in the immense silence. Their child, already tucked into bed, complained of a strange sound, a lingering whisper that seemed to hang just at the edge of hearing. Lost in the sighing of the wind, their bed wasn't touching the floor. It was raised, balanced precariously on a stack of rough, red bricks at each corner. It was a peculiar sight, a strange precaution against a threat they didn't fully understand. A tradition passed down through generations, a safeguard against the things that creep in the dark. It was a silent admission that they believed, just a little, in the stories. And tonight, their belief would be tested. The night deepened, the moon hidden behind a veil of thin clouds. Silence descended, but it was a heavy, watchful silence. Then, a sound, the unmistakable creak of a floorboard, a single, sharp protest from the old wood. It wasn't the house settling. It was a footstep. Another creak, closer this time. A small, yet powerful presence had entered their room, circling them as they slept. Something with the imagined glint of sharp teeth, of eyes that glowed with their own internal, malevolent light, and a shape framed by long, weary hair. The mattress suddenly shook, a violent, abrupt jolt that ripped them from their sleep. Their hearts hammered against their ribs. Tiny, unnervingly quick footsteps tapped across the dusty floor. Too light to be human, too deliberate to be an animal. A faint sound, like the ghost of laughter, echoed in the corners of the room. A chilling, high-pitched giggle that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Their eyes darted around the darkened space, trying to make sense of the terror. A cup on the bedside table slid, as if pushed by an unseen hand, and clattered to the floor. The lantern on the far wall flickered wildly, casting dancing, distorted shadows that writhed and twisted like living things. They were no longer alone. The stories were true. The Tokoloshe was here, desperate and terrified. They knew they couldn't fight this alone. The next day, they called for a sangoma, a traditional healer, a man who understood the language of the spirits and the ways of the old magic. He arrived as dusk began to fall, his presence bringing a fragile sense of hope. In the center of their small home, he built a fire. Herbs, pungent and sacred, were cast into the flames, releasing thick, acrid smoke that billowed towards the ceiling. The fire crackled and spat, its light painting the walls in shades of orange and black. The sangoma began to chant, his voice a low, rhythmic growl in Zulu, an ancient invocation calling on a power older than the house, older than the hills. The chants rose, filling the small space, weaving a protective web of sound. But that night, the Tokoloshe, enraged by the challenge to its domain, struck with terrifying force. As the family huddled together, their eyes wide with fear, a shadow, impossibly dark and distinct, leapt across the wall. It was a small, humanoid shape. But it moved with a speed that was unnatural, defying the laws of light and physics. The child let out a piercing scream, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. And then, the impossible happened. The bed, the heavy wooden frame with the three of them on it, began to lift. It floated, just a few inches at first, hovering silently above the bricks that were supposed to keep them safe. The air grew cold, a pocket of winter in the small, firelit room. The feeling of a malevolent presence was suffocating, a heavy weight pressing down on their chests. And just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The bed dropped back onto the bricks with a solid thud. The air warmed. The shadows settled. The presence vanished, retreating back into the nothingness from which it came. Years passed. The family couldn't stay. They moved away to a town where the streets were lit and the houses were close together, a place where the shadows couldn't grow so deep. They tried to leave the memory behind, to dismiss it as a shared nightmare, a trick of the mind born from fear and folklore. But the father never forgot. He would sometimes wake in the dead of night, his heart pounding, listening for the creak of a floorboard, the whisper of unseen laughter. He knew that some tales are not just bedtime stories. Some tales are warnings. They live and breathe in the quiet places, in the darkness, just outside the reach of the light. So if you're ever lying in bed and you hear footsteps when you know no one is there, if you feel your bed shift or float when you are perfectly still, beware. Don't dismiss it. Don't try to reason it away. The Tokoloshe may be watching you. Thanks for watching. If this story sent a chill down your spine, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the world's darkest legends.